Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Phillip and I'm today's guest interviewer on behalf of Donate for Refugees. I've been involved with the refugee crisis since 2015, doing a variety of different fundraising, collecting aid, and I've been out to a few of the Greek islands myself over the years to see what it's like firsthand. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to have Josh Evans-Jesra with me, and he is the coordinator with Project Play. Project Play is a small grassroots charity based in northern France. And Josh is passionate about giving refugee children the chance to learn and play and escape the hardship of the life that they've had with the journeys that they've been on through whichever countries they've come from, even if it's just for a few hours to escape being on the camps or wherever they're forced to live at that particular time. Today, he's going to share with us what life is like for children that are in northern France right now, some of the challenges that they're up against, and how Project Play can really bring light relief for these kids at a time when it's incredibly dark and stressful for their parents. So thanks for joining us today, Josh, and thank you to everyone who is joining us either live or anyone that is also catching up on the replay afterwards. Please feel free to type in your questions as we're going along. So if there's anything that Josh says that you'd like to know a bit more about, or you've got any particular questions that you want to put to Josh, please feel free to pop them into the chat. And if we've got time at the end, I will read them out. So, hey Josh, it's great to have you here with us today.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to speak to you, and yeah, thanks so much. For taking the time to speak to us.
So, Josh, could you just start us off by sort of bringing us up to date on what's currently happening in northern France with the refugees?
Yeah, sure. So currently in northern France, generally around Calais and Dunkirk, there's between sort of 1,000 and 2,000 migrants, and they're generally they're from all over, kind of generally from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Eritrea, Sudan, Ethiopia. So from a range of places, um, and they are most people in northern France are trying to make it to the UK. Because there's no safe legal route to the UK. They are having to take incredibly sort of dangerous risks. We've all seen over the summer the reporting on the boat crossings. So this is one of the main ways in which people are trying to get across. And whilst they're waiting for ways to try and get across, they are sort of existing on the outskirts of society. In sort of the edge of industrial estates, in woodlands, generally in sort of just very bleak kind of conditions. So most people are sleeping rough. They're sleeping outside, um, uh, with nothing more than a sort of tent to their name.
Wow, okay. So, and how are the children impacted by that?
Um, so for the children, it's for everyone, it's incredibly bleak. For the children, they've had to make incredibly difficult journeys, and they have no kind of structure to their day. So that what happens is that, yeah, they're, like I said, the people are sleeping in tents in a very hostile environment. And the impact this has, they have no, they're not going to school, obviously. They don't know, getting access to basic services such as food and shelter is very limited. There's some great organisations that we work with on the ground here who do a brilliant job of providing some stuff, but they're stepping in where the state is failing, and obviously don't have the same kind of level of resources as the state would have. So it's incredibly tough. And the sort of stuff that they're experiencing is something that no child should have to experience, and no person should have to experience. Um, so the kinds of things that they have to kind of endure are a constant sort of police harassment. So the informal camps where people stay are evicted once, twice, three times a week, and what this entails is the police removing people from their shelters, removing the shelters and all their possessions, putting them on buses and taking them away to accommodation centres, which are very poor, inadequate, and they are they once they've got these accommodation centres, most people are trying to make it to the UK, so they eventually come back anyways. So we met a family the other day. We'd been seeing them for the last couple of weeks, and they were evicted. Um, so we didn't see them on the day of the eviction. We saw them the next day, and they spoke about how they had to walk for 6 hours with no food back to Dunkirk. And when they got there, all their stuff was gone. So they had to kind of try to find some way of getting some food and shelter again. But yeah, as you can imagine, it's just an incredibly sort of traumatic experience on top of a number of traumatic events that these people would have had to experience on their very difficult journeys.
Yeah, sounds horrendous to be having to start from scratch all the time like that, and with no way of earning any money to kind of be able to replace some of the things that are being lost.
Mm. Yeah. No, I think it's incredibly unstable, and the uncertainty that comes with this sort of life, and the upheaval, the constant upheaval, has a huge impact on people's kind of mental health, and we see this in sessions kind of quite a lot. Um, yeah, just the different ways in which trauma kind of comes out, whether it's kind of um, children being kind of quite sort of like vacant, or not being able to engage in certain ways, or potentially being quite aggressive, or there's a number of different ways in which in which these sort of traumatic events sort of play out.
Yeah. So can you just explain a little bit about how Project Play works? So are you always in the same place and people come to you, or do you move around? How does it work?
So we're a mobile service. So we have a van, and what we do is we travel to the sites where people are generally staying, and try to kind of set up as safe a space as possible for children to kind of play and have some sort of basic education. Um, so at the moment, we had previously had a site for most of summer, which was kind of like a field, maybe like a 5-10 minute walk from where people were staying. Um, Recently, in the last 2 weeks or so, the police have stopped us kind of being able to do our services there. So we've moved it, and we're now doing our service where the other organisations distribute. So this is in a place called Brutality, in Grand Centre, just outside Dunkirk, and it's a kind of a woodland sort of area, but it's quite different to how things have been here before. Previously, there were spaces where most people would all kind of camp together, um, and for us, it would mean that Project Play would turn up, and the kids would all be able to see the van, and everyone would come out and have a kind of session like that. Now it is more difficult, because of the constant evictions and the state trying to make it, like I said, as hostile environment as possible. They're trying to make it sort of impossible for people to exist here. It means that people are far more spread out. So kind of getting access to services is a lot harder. Finding new families when they arrive is also very difficult. So it's made kind of doing the service. It's added another challenge to it, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah, so how would people find out where to come and that your services are available?
So the main way is, because especially now where we are, so we're by all the other distributions. So when families come down to get food, or they come down to charge their phones or get tents, um, that is kind of like we have some like cards, and we will kind of go around, speak to families, explain what we do. We also work closely with the Refugee Women's Centre, and they work closely with families, and they are. They help us a lot by kind of informing the families about when we kind of do services, and where. So at the moment, we go out 5 days a week on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Um, so that's the ones that we do in the field, and then we also, that's in Dunkirk, sorry. And we also do 2 days in Calais in a place called Secours
Mhm.
Catholique, which is a community centre. Um, And we also got on Wednesdays we go to a place called Maison Sazam, which is a safe house for vulnerable families, and we do sessions there as well.
Wow, so busy then. Not much
Yeah,
time.
it's busy.
And what kind of things do you do with the kids?
So we do a range of activities. So a typical project play session, there's kind of like three parts to it, I guess. Normally when we arrive, we do kind of like an opening circle. So this kind of involves like a number of different kind of games and songs to try and kind of sort of like manage energy levels, bring all the kids together, get everyone to know each other. Um, because often the children won't know each other, and we get new kids all the time. So that's great. That's a really like nice way of starting sessions. It's basically a chance for everyone to be really silly, and I think it's quite good for the kind of kids to see sort of adults just being a bit just being silly and kind of having fun. So we do that, and then the next part we normally have like a structured activity. So what have we done recently? So it can be simple stuff like Play-Doh, so we'll make Play-Doh with the children, and then which they absolutely love. Play-Doh and slime seems to go down really, really well. um, or we do some crafting activities. So our theme this week just gone was collaboration. So we're trying to encourage kind of like cooperation and teamwork with the kids. So we did stuff like we did den making. So we brought along loads of cardboard boxes and different materials, and kids would work in teams to make some pretty interesting dens. We also did sort of tower building. So we split off into teams, and it was a competition, so who could build the biggest tower, which was very fun. Um, that was good as well because some of the kids were quite proud of the towers they did make, and then left with them as well. So it's often quite nice to kind of do an activity where you make something that the children can take away with them, because as I was saying earlier, like they have very little control over what's going on in their lives and have stuff taken from them constantly. So to have some kind of ownership over something is quite important. So yeah, we have a kind of structured activity, and then the last sort of section is sort of free play. So we bring along a number of different resources, whether it's kind of board games, Uno, that sort of stuff, and sports equipment as well. And this is a chance for more sort of child-led play. Um, but I guess what kind of underlies kind of a lot of the kind of sort of theory behind it is the importance of play for sort of child sort of development. So there's a number of kind of key parts, key sort of like objectives that we try to kind of focus on, whether it's kind of creativity, or cooperation, or like fine motor skills, gross motor skills, all those kinds of things which children would normally be getting from kind of going to nursery, going to school, but these children don't have as much access to. We try to really focus on them, to help the children sort of develop. But also, I think play can kind of be a way of processing different kinds of traumas. So that is kind of like a desired sort of like outcome from some of the stuff we do as well.
Yeah, and what ways do you see them processing the trauma when they're with you?
It's not necessarily in really obvious ways. It might often it's quite good to do kind of sensory sort of stuff. Like I said earlier, sort of like Play-Doh, we made like salt dough shapes and slime, all these kinds of things. So stuff where people can really kind of get involved in like sensory sort of stuff. I think it's kind of like quite a physical way of kind of letting out some of those kind of tensions and stresses. But it's often in the stuff that people kind of, when we do like painting and stuff that people will paint, like we did painting yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago maybe, and lots of children end up painting houses and stuff that kind of ordinarily would seem quite normal, but in this sort of context is just it's obviously kind of normal stuff that kids would want to desire, but they don't have.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. And as I was thinking about leading up to this week, I got out some pictures from my first trip in 2016 that the kids had done for me. And I was looking at them, I spread them all out, and nearly everyone had a house on it and sunshine. And that's That's no different to what kids would typically draw who aren't going through trauma. But the really sad thing is that these kids just don't have access to a house to go back to, the one thing that would give them that security. So I've got a few comments coming through. Laura's saying, thank you for your humanity and commitment in the face of such horrendous conditions. And Julie saying, thank you for enabling these poor children to enjoy a wonderful oasis of play and normality in their difficult lives. As we're sort of thinking about bringing those kind of moments of joy for the kids, what sort of interaction do you see with the parents? Do they come along to the sessions? You know, how do they fare in these difficult situations?
I think that's a kind of quite an important sort of part of the project. Actually, is kind of, as much as it's about kind of giving kind of a safe space for kind of for play for the children, it's also about giving a bit of respite for the parents. Yeah, like I said, we work closely with the Refugee Women's Centre, so they normally set up a space next to where we're doing session, and this is where the parents have a space to kind of to basically relax and kind of know that their children are kind of safe and kind of hopefully having fun. But also often we get the parents coming over, which can be, it can be really sweet. There's some really kind of sweet interactions, and I think it's really positive for them to be able to see like their kids kind of having fun. And like often we'll do stuff like some of the stuff that the kids create. They'll then kind of run over to their mum or dad and kind of show them quite proudly, which is yeah is very sweet. So yeah, and often the parents will kind of get involved as well. So we had, when we were doing painting a couple of days ago, there was one of the dads that came over, and I think that he was like an artist himself, and he was showing some of the kids sort of how to paint, which was, yeah. So moments like that are really positive. Um, um, yeah, and I think it's just, I think it, I can't kind of quite imagine the sort of the challenges that the parents sort of have to kind of go through. So I think for them to kind of just get like an hour, a couple of hours where they know that their kind of children are kind of getting what all children deserve, basically, just for a short amount of time, is really positive.
Yeah, I think also there's some research to show that even for adults, taking time to be playful and indulge in those kind of activities is hugely beneficial for their well-being as well. I remember getting some plasticine out when I was in Leros, and a mum was busy doing this kind of amazing creation out of the plasticine, and then she then produced some photos from her phone, and it turns out like she was a jewelry maker back in Syria, and she was showing me these amazing pictures of the jewelry that she'd created, you know, and then suddenly everyone's wanting to look at the pictures, and it's just that moment where they can just forget, you know, all the hard stuff that's going on, and be reminded that you know that they're actually humans with creative interests and amazing skills, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's, yeah, it's part of what it's about, is kind of, yeah, giving giving like a moment of kind of like normality in an incredibly sort of like abnormal situation.
And do you get the opportunity to build relationships with the kids? So do you see the same kids again and again, or is it tend to be different faces each time you go?
I think it really depends. So I think historically, so last summer, for example, with Project Play, they would see a lot of the same kids throughout summer. I mean, obviously it changes all the time, as people kind of either make it to the UK or go to accommodation centres or go elsewhere in Europe. Um, but they would see a lot of the same faces. This summer it's been quite different. I think a large reason for this is the increased police presence and the increased sort of evictions, um, meaning that making conditions so bleak that people are taking more dangerous risks, i.e., taking the kind of boat. So actually, I would say that we don't generally see the same kids for more than about 2 weeks, which makes it more difficult to do sort of like long-term sort of projects and stuff. Um, but yeah, and there's quite a sort of like high turnover, but it's surprising in quite a short amount of time the relationships that you can build up. And yeah, it's really positive. I think it's quite I think when a lot of adults that they're coming into contact with treat them with a lot of hostility, I think it's kind of quite positive when they kind of get adults that they kind of feel like they can trust a little bit, and yeah, just interact in quite a sort of playful way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, we've certainly seen some of the brutality that there seems to be when the camps are being evicted, and the
Mm.
kids be on the receiving end of, seeing adults acting in that way. It's hardly surprising that they're, withdrawn or, displaying kind of quite extreme behaviour.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that stood out to me actually is so sometimes the police will drive past or a helicopter will go overhead, and it's kind of when this sort of like I said, this kind of like moment of kind of normality kind of gets interrupted, and you see the children basically immediately kind of go on edge and look kind of like afraid and be unsettled. And I was just I saw it and I remember and I just sort of felt like when I was that age as a kind of like white passing um, man from like a middle class sort of like upbringing. Kind of when I was that sort of age and I would see the police, that's not something I would sort of be afraid of. That's which I know indicates mine sort of like privilege, but it's just really shocking to kind of see that they're a symbol of kind of sort of oppression for these people. Um, and I think that it's important to kind of to remind ourselves that kind of the UK is very complicit in this. The reason the people are there is because of the actions of the UK, so not providing safe and legal routes for people to go and claim asylum, but also funding as well. A lot of like our taxpayers' money is being sent over, like millions over the last sort of 10 years, has been spent on building up the border here. So the fences, when you if you get off the ferry in Calais, you'll see miles and miles of fences. It looks like you're kind of in some sort of dystopian film. And the funding for the police here as well. So it's we bear a lot of responsibility, I think, which is a big
Yeah.
reason why there's quite a lot of British volunteers over here, I think, as well. Essentially, kind of resisting kind of what our government is doing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Justin saying the world would be a better place if more people showed this kind of humanity. And I guess if they could have more positive adult role models, it would make life a lot easier for them. So I'm sure you've seen hundreds of children, Josh, over the time that you've been involved with Project Play. I just wanted to ask you if there's any that particularly stick in your mind and for what reasons they do.
We're not allowed to have favourites, Lucy, but I do. I do. Um, yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, there's so many kind of interactions that have been brilliant. There was one particular family who were here for most of summer actually. There was sort of like a 4 or 5 year old boy and a 1 year old girl, and they were really sweet. And it was interesting when we kind of so we had to suspend services when uh, Corona sort of lockdown happened at the end of March, beginning of April, and we started services up again at the end of June. It was, and this family, we started seeing them, and in conversations with the mum, she was particularly worried about the young boy who was just um, very angry, finding it really hard to engage with stuff, and just yeah, just obviously not a happy boy. But we saw a real change in him over this couple of months that we were working with him. We saw him kind of go from not interacting with other kids particularly well, potentially being picked on by other kids a little bit, also not engaging in stuff like the circle at the beginning, not being able to focus on activities particularly well and by the end of the time that we were with him, we saw a completely different boy. Really, he had several kind of friends, would get on with kids really well. would be kind of leading songs in circle, and yeah, just a really really positive change in him. And I'm not saying that's completely down to us or anything like that, but I do think that it had an impact on him. So that was really positive actually.
I bet
There
the
was
mum was absolutely delighted, wasn't she?
yeah. No, I think she was, and we're stoked to find out a couple of weeks ago they made it across to the UK now as well. So I'm hoping that they're kind of getting a bit of better treatment than they were receiving here.
Oh, that's such good news. So we're going to be drawing to a close quite soon. Would you believe we've been talking for about 25 minutes already? So I just want to invite any of the people that have made comments to pop any questions that they might have into the comments section. I've had a few comments just saying how lovely it is to hear the stories and just, empathy around the appalling circumstance and situation that they're facing day in, day out. So what can we do to make a difference, Josh? If we're listening here and we're thinking, what fabulous, amazing work you're doing and how I'd love to be able to support you more, what can people do to support Project Play?
I mean, there's a number of different things. So I think it's next week. I'll post in the Facebook group the exact dates. But we're doing sort of like a fundraising campaign called Play for Play. And the idea is over like a 4-day period, we want to clock up sort of like 100 hours of play from people kind of around the world. So the idea is you can play any sort of game, whether it's board games, sports, whatever. You take a picture of that, send it to the Facebook page with how long you played for, and to take part, you donate a bit of money to the fundraiser. And we're hoping that, yeah, like I said, we can clock up 100 hours of play and have all these kind of pictures of people kind of playing in kind of solidarity, I guess. So that's sort of one way that hopefully hopefully a fun sort of way of supporting us. We're always kind of in need of donations of toys and games. We're going to be posting soon a list of specific things that we want. Like I'm quite keen to get like an archery set and like just a range of different stuff so we can do some more exciting stuff with it with the kids. So we'll post that. That's a really good way. Equally, if anyone has got experience working with children and would like to come and volunteer, you can go to our website and go through the application process there. We just require that people volunteer for a minimum of 2 months to keep up sort of continuity with the children. So there's a couple of ways. There's also we're doing me and friends are doing a project called Solidarity Tapes. So this is we've kind of got 20 different musicians to contribute songs to a mixtape that is going to be fundraising for 3 different organisations, Project Play being one of them, 2 others, one called Mass Action and one called All African Women's Group. So all groups that support migrants either in the UK or in Europe. So that will be released at the end of the month. So if you want to support that, you can buy that album, and it will come with a zine with some information, more information on migrant justice struggles and like how to get involved in activism. Equally, there's plenty of things that you can do back in the UK as part of the broader kind of fight for migrant justice. Many of you will have kind of seen this kind of quite dangerous far right rhetoric, which has become incredibly mainstream. There are sort of fascists attacking people on the beaches when they get off dinghies, going into hotels that home asylum seekers and harassing people there. So there's been a number of different sort of protests and solidarity marches that people can look into and try and get involved in that. There's a group called Migrants Organise in the UK, which is a migrant-led group to kind of organise for migrant rights. So there's a number of different groups that I'd urge people to get involved in. I think now is an incredibly important time to stand up for migrant rights because they are increasingly oppressed, and yeah, standing by and doing nothing is not okay anymore, I don't think.
Yeah. I absolutely love the idea of playing in solidarity, and I think it also shows our kids. It creates greater empathy for them. I know my kids absolutely loved it when I came back from Greece, and I could show them the photographs of the kids playing with the bubbles, and all the things that we'd kind of taken out, and see the kids enjoying it. So I just think the more we can kind of share what kids in different countries are doing, the more we create that sense of that we're all one. We're all just human beings, and just be kind. So I'll certainly be looking out for that and getting in some hours play to share with you.
Brilliant.
So Laura's wanting to know very quickly, so we'll just cover this one off. How did you get involved in Project Play yourself?
I got involved, so I'd been coming out to Calais in 2018 with a number of different projects, and I was back visiting for a week over Christmas, and I had a space in my van, and I gave a lift to Claire. So Claire's one of the co-founders of the project, and they were just setting it up at the time actually, and I went on one of the first Project Play sessions then, and was just blown away by their kind of commitment and what they were setting up, and then I had to kind of work for a year or so, and then once that was out, once I'd saved up some money, I wanted to come out here more full time. So that was kind of one of the ways I got involved.
And your background's with kids as well, Josh, isn't it? Haven't you done work in the UK with kids?
Yeah. I've been involved in sort of school camp stuff, and worked in schools, and quite a lot of forest school sort of stuff as well.
Fantastic. So Julie's saying thank you for taking the time to tell us all about Project Play. So thank you so much, Josh, because I know how busy you are, and Sunday sounds like Sunday's the only day that you probably get some time off and some time for respite and recovery. So thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today, and tell us all about the fabulous work that you're doing, and just sharing with us those moments of joy that you're able to create for the kids. That's all we've got time for today. But Donate for Refugees will be back. Next is Sunday, the 1st of November, where someone is going to be talking to Clark Schofield, who is part of Collective Aid in Belgrade, Serbia. So be sure to tune in again to get the just the real truth about what's happening on the ground. I think in the UK we get real censored news, and we often don't get to hear the real stuff that's happening, and the real challenges that people are up against, and the conditions that they're having to live in. So Toby's saying amazing work that you do, Josh. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to talk to you today, and to just be able to hear all about the fabulous stuff you're doing with the kids. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you so much, Lucy, and a huge thank you to Donate for Refugees as well for all they do to support us and the other organisations throughout Europe. It makes a huge difference. So thank you very much for listening.
Thanks.